Hello there, my name is Betsy, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use some of these wonderful inks to do some ink washes over your drawings. And so I am going to be using two methods today. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one. For our first method, we're going to be using one of these refillable watercolor pens. Most people do have these, but if you don't have any, I am going to link these in the description so that you can check them out. And what you usually do with these is, if you are a watercolor artist, you probably already know, you fill this up with water and you close it up, and now you can just use the brush to kind of work with your watercolors, and this has just got all the water ready in it. But the way that we're going to use it is we are going to take our ink, and today I'm just going to get started right now with just this regular black ink. This is a non-waterproof, but you can also get it waterproof depending on what kind of art you want to do. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'm going to show you just how I get started. The first thing I'm going to do is, thankfully, this little guy has a dropper already built in, so that's wonderful. And so I'm just going to pick up the dropper, and inside of my chamber you can kind of see that it's already a little dark because I tend to use it for these ink washes. So I'm just going to count a few drops, and the first strength that I'm going to choose is just 5 drops of ink. So let's do that. So now we have 5 drops of ink in here. Let me close this up all the way because I don't want to get ink all over the place. And then what I'm going to do is, now that I have my 5 drops in here, I am now going to fill the chamber up halfway with water. I do often fill it up all the way, but I've noticed that if the ink remains in here for too long, it kind of hardens or dries in a few spots. So for this time it's about halfway, so it's filled to about here, so not all the way. Now all I need to do is close it up, and I need to give it a good shake just so that everything gets distributed really nicely. So let's do that. I'm just going to use a little bit of spare paper. This is a watercolor paper just because I want to see exactly what the color looks like with such a thin consistency. So I'm just going to make a handful of lines here. Sometimes you might need to squeeze it a little bit so that the liquid comes out. There we go. So this right here is our consistency with only 5 drops. So it's nice and light, really gentle. If you are not familiar with how to use this, this is a good way to get started. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue adding increments of 5 drops until I get a consistency that I'm happy with, or right now I'm actually really just doing it so that you can see what these are going to look like. Okay, so now we're going to test it out with, instead of only 5 drops of ink, now there are 10 drops in here. So let's see how that looks. It should ideally be a little darker. For now it's going to come out, there we go. Sometimes you just kind of need to let it flow, and then you'll see what the true consistency is. And I do recommend that you try doing this so that you see about how much ink you're happy with. So there we go, there's the difference from 5 drops to 10. Let's go ahead and try 15 and let's see how that looks. And this is what we have with 15 drops of ink in here. Oh, there you go, we got a good amount of flow there. You can see it looks considerably darker now. Let's see how it looks once it dries. It usually softens up a tiny bit. So there we go. And now you can see that this is nicely dried up, and these are the strengths that we have here. I do believe that this is a little too dark for my taste, so all I'm going to do is add a little bit of water to the chamber just to get it thinned down, so it's somewhere in between these two, and I think that would be perfect for me. So now that I added just a little bit of water, let's see how this turns out, and maybe this will be a nice consistency for today's exercise. All right. And here we have it. So this is the consistency that we've got right now, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's very close to this one, but just very slightly darker. Absolutely perfect. So now when we go ahead and use this, this is non-waterproof, and so just keep that in mind if yours is waterproof or not. And so when you have your drawing, this is printed, so I know that this isn't going to interfere with my drawing, and then you can just go ahead and start using it really gently to start adding those little shadows, and just start playing around with some of the places where you want to use this. Keep in mind that for the most part, Once this dries, it will be just a little lighter than the way it looks right now. When it is wet, it always looks darker. When it is dry, it looks lighter. So try not to be afraid and just try it out. I am using right now a page from my coloring book. So this is a printable coloring book. It is available on my website. If you're interested, you can always check it out. I have a link in the description, and it's just $5 for the whole coloring book. So you can have lots of stuff to play with. So there we go. There's the first layer. I'm going to give this a chance to dry really quickly, and then I'll come back and add another layer. So here we have it. It's nice and dry now. And now what I can do is use this same exact mixture that I have here and just go back over it and add teeny tiny little details right here. And the great thing is that now right here where I added a second layer of ink, it's going to look just a little darker than it did on the first go. And so there we go. We can just make it much nicer, add even more depth. And of course, the best paper to use for this would be some kind of watercolor paper or mixed media paper, because they are so much better at absorbing all of that moisture. Right now, what I am using is a type of cardstock, and this works well for me for the most part. I'm okay with it. I can do this kind of thing. So let's go ahead and let this dry, and then I'll show you the results after I show you the second method for doing this. So for our second method, I'm going to show you a much easier way that really only requires the use of your brushes. Let's say you have some little brushes like this, or any kind of watercolor brushes work great, really just because they have that really nice point to them. And this is wonderful when you're using a lot of water. So what I'm going to be using is this Liquitex acrylic ink. These come in these really lovely muted colors. I did just get the set recently on Amazon, and it cost under $30. I know it can be quite a bit of money if you're only starting to invest right now in inks, but this was a set of 6 inks. So it came in this one and all of these here. There's 5, and it also even included some white ink, which I thought was really nice. I really like to use the white ink. So how about we make a few mixtures today, and what I'm going to use is I'm just going to use the tray that the inks came in, which was this little tray. It actually was holding the bottles, and I'm going to use this to create some watered down versions of all of the inks. So how about we take a quick minute right now to put these into all of these little wells. And so now that I have all my wells filled up right now with my ink, you'll notice I only used 2 drops in each one. You can actually just use 1 if you're just getting started. These are so highly pigmented that you really don't need very much ink. So now I'm going to add just a handful of drops, anywhere from 5 to 10 drops. It's going to water it down quite a bit. And this is going to let us use it to essentially color our drawing. And we are going to just kind of mix it up in a little bit. Especially the ones that are super intense, you will want to make sure that they are very well stirred and that they do have a lot of water in them. I'm just going to use a small stick to mix these. You can always use your brush. Now that I have my colors mixed up really nicely, they are watered down quite a bit, and I can use these to either add some kind of shading or coloring to my drawings. Of course, like I said, make sure that what you're working on is not going to be affected by the use of this much water. So I'm going to use this area right here, and I'll show you how I like to do this. Let me go ahead and I'll start off with a relatively small brush. This is very tiny, just so that you can see how I work in some of the smaller areas. And so right here, how about I choose this color here? Let's see how it looks. So right here, I'm just adding color to the different sides. Let me go ahead and try to add some purple on the other side here. And I personally prefer to use these much smaller brushes. I think they give me a little bit more control over where I'm dropping the color. Although I'm not necessarily super careful or delicate, it just feels really nice to use this smaller brush. So there you can kind of see, and the other wonderful thing is that you can kind of start mixing up your colors and just add different tones here and there just to see what happens as you kind of layer them on top of each other. Again, the perfect paper for this would be something along the lines of a watercolor, and that would really help a lot. So there we go, just added some of that, and then what I can do is once this dries, I can go ahead and use the black or the gray or something along those lines. All of these colors are really lovely. Like this one right here, this one is the, I believe it is the gray, and it kind of has like a purplish tone to it, so it's really lovely. So there we go. And I do have a different type of ink that I'm going to show you very briefly, and it is certainly one of my favorite inks to use for this. This is a pearlescent ink, and it is just so lovely. It comes in all sorts of different colors. They range in price anywhere from around $8 to $12 depending on the color, and so I have a couple of these, and I made a pen here. I filled one with some of that really lovely, let's see, what color is this? It's a waterfall green, and it is just so gorgeous, and it does have some shimmer to it even after you water it down. And so what I will do is I will just get it primed, especially if you're using an ink like this that has some kind of shimmer inside of it. It will kind of clog up a little bit, so keep that in mind. So there we go, it's flowing now, so that's pretty nice. And then I can just go into my drawings and just kind of start adding a little bit of color. I'm just playing around with it. So lovely. And then we can just kind of start mixing up the colors. I'll add a little bit over here. And the wonderful thing is these inks that I'm showing you right now, all of these colored inks, they are acrylic. And because they are acrylic, once they get into the paper, they're pretty much all set. You don't have to worry about them mixing later when you add other things. They're basically just going to layer. And so keep that in mind when you're deciding which inks to get, or which of your inks that you already have, which ones you're going to use. If they are acrylic, they won't get muddied, and also you can mix them and get some really interesting colors. So here we have a little bit of the coloration going on here. It's just really wonderful. And so now that I have shared some of this with you, I'm going to play around, and in a bit I'm going to show you what this looks like once I'm done. And here is the result. So I think it turned out really nice. I really love those colors. Again, that set of inks that I used had these muted colors, and once they're watered down really nicely, they turn out so gorgeous. So here is what it looks like a little bit closer up so that you can see it. I did use that mix there that had the shimmer, so you can kind of see it right there, and it's really shimmery. I hope that you have fun doing this kind of thing. Don't worry about how it's going to turn out. Just play around, and then you'll see if there are any parts of this that you really like. As you can see here, this is really great for kind of layering colors. I like to start off with those muted colors first, and then I use this one here that has the black ink in it, and I use that to really kind of make it pop by adding that dark tone there to the little shadows. So right there and there. And what I'll probably do is just over the next few days, I'll keep coming back to this drawing and just working on it a little bit at a time like this. So each time I'll just add a little more. And so this will be kind of like a slow burning kind of process. And I'll just see how far it goes. If you are familiar with watercolor, this is going to feel very similar to that. And here it is again. There we go. So that's it. It looks pretty good. I hope that you give this a try and that you enjoy it. It's pretty nice. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed this quick little tutorial, and I will see you in the next one.